got caught up in a series of love bombing and all kinds of entanglement. It wasn't until I was able to leave that relationship and get some very specific therapy where I was able to be resourced and educated on psychological abuse and the different strategies and tactics that were used to slowly but surely erode that really strong sense of self. And it was in this relationship that I really came to a place where I was questioning myself, doubting myself.
Welcome to Silent No Longer, where your past is a chapter and not the whole book. I'm Mesha, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a safe, judgment-free space for anyone healing from toxic or abusive relationships. Through faith and healing, I found my way forward, and now my purpose is to help others do the same. My hope is that you'll be reminded that you are not alone, your past does not define you, and healing is possible. If you are ready to take the next step, you can learn more in my book, Behind Closed Doors, schedule a free clarity call with me, or explore neurotransformation therapy coaching, now available to support you in rewiring limited beliefs and creating lasting change. Welcome back to Silent No Longer, and today I'm joined with Cathy. Cathy is award-winning author and founder of Intuitive Self. Thank you so much for being here today, Cathy.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to connect.
Can you just start out by telling us a little bit about your story?
Sure. So, where to begin? I feel like my story has many different layers, and like everyone's life is, has different factors and complexities. But I guess the most relevant part of my story to share with you today is my experience of disconnection from my intuition and then coming back to feeling like I have a very strong sense of my intuition now, and I work with my intuition in partnership as an ally.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like as a child, I always felt like I had a really strong sense of self and a really strong intuitive knowing. And I didn't really recognize that at the time, but I can see that with hindsight. With my life, it sort of took me in different directions. I wanted to study journalism, then I wanted to get into community development, and I spent many years in community development, both internationally and in Australia, my home country. And in this process of wanting to give back, wanting to connect with community, wanting to learn about different cultures and in a real capacity building way. And for a lot of that time, I was incredibly outward focused. I was very much in the doing, must be productive, working really hard and striving really hard. And as much as that felt really good and it felt really beautiful to be giving back in that way and to be involved in that way, I recognized the ways in which I was keeping myself so busy because I didn't want to sit still to really feel any feelings, anything that was uncomfortable. And I found myself based back in Australia for a short period of time. And when I was, kind of at this peak, I guess, of really feeling strong in my sense of self and had various different career goals and creative ambitions, I met someone and I got caught up in a series of love bombing and all kinds of entanglement. And it took me a bit of time to recognize what was happening. And it wasn't until I was able to leave that relationship and get some very specific therapy where I was able to be resourced and educated on psychological abuse and the different strategies and tactics that were used to slowly but surely erode that really strong sense of self. And it was in this relationship that I really came to a place where I was questioning myself, doubting myself. I was being what I now know as, manipulated and coerced. And the piece I want to focus on in this is that my intuition was there from the beginning. When I first met this person, my intuition was giving me signals.
Mhm.
And I intuitively felt that something was a bit off, something wasn't right. But because for many different reasons, I guess, I ignored these body signals. I ignored this intuitive knowing, and I either dismissed them or I overrode them with thought, oh, I'll give the person the benefit of the doubt, or, oh,
Mhm.
no, it can't be that bad. Or, the way that I talked to myself, I was betraying this part of myself that knew and was trying to give me a warning.
Mhm.
When I finally left this relationship and started to wrap my head around what actually had gone down and learn ways that I could feel safe again in my body to trust myself again. Where I started really came down to recognizing that I had this intuition that had been giving me signals, but I had ignored her and I needed to repair that relationship. So it started with me recognizing that I had abandoned my intuition. My intuition hadn't abandoned me. I had abandoned my intuition. And I started by writing letters to my intuition. I started by getting really involved as a student with somatic movement therapy and expressive art therapy. And this outlet of, instead of talking directly to my experience, which I was doing with a therapist at the time who was a DV specialist, I bolstered that therapy with bringing the body into it and expressing all of the different emotions through the art. And it was profound to me that all of the experiences that I carried, all of the trauma that was stored within me was now given a safe space and a safe container to be expressed and to be felt and to be heard, and that I was honoring my experience by giving myself that and by repairing that relationship with my intuition. So this was many, over a decade ago, it was many moons ago. And I fell in love with this work and these modalities, so much so that they became not only pillars of my own healing, but I then went on to get trained in this field, and I've been able to alchemize my experiences to now be able to offer these kinds of containers and these modalities to other women who, for whatever reason and through whatever experience, have also disconnected with their intuition and also disconnected with their body.
I love how you explained it because and I have, like, so many questions. So many questions for you right now. Because I guess I don't myself being through all the trauma I have my entire life, I don't and this is where I'm struggling at right now on my healing journey, I think, is understanding, like, what's just nonsense in your head, what's your intuition, and what is your nervous system, because
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't know if I just feel scared all the time because I don't know which direction to go to, you know what
Mm,
I mean? Like, what am I supposed to listen to? Am I supposed to listen to my head? Am I supposed to listen to my heart? Am I supposed to listen to my body feeling like it's going crazy because does that mean something's wrong? Does that not mean something's wrong? I don't, you
yes.
know.
Yeah, and that is I can really relate to that, and it's such a common experience, particularly when we have found ourselves in situations where our reality has been flipped upside down, where our mind has been played with and manipulated so much that we are now questioning every little thing. And
Mhm.
because of our body's response to traumatic events, we then get into this often hypervigilant state where we are constantly scanning for danger and everything becomes foggy. Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
then we're not able to understand what is what is my yes? What is my no? This feels off, but how do I place this? How do I place
Mhm.
all of this information and this feedback? And there's so many different layers to it. And probably the most common question and challenge that I had, but that I get from women when I start to speak about intuition in my workshops and in my client work is, but how do I know? How do I know what is a fear? What is insecurity, or what is my wisdom coming through trying to give me a warning? There's many different elements of this because in my journey, I recognized really early on that I was living solely in my mind and I had already been in a pattern and a coping mechanism of being disconnected and being dissociated from my body. So there was already that disconnect. And because of different experiences I had also closed up my heart. So
Mhm.
these three major parts of ourselves that you mentioned, the mind, the body, and the heart, there is an immense capacity here for wisdom and resources. And it's been my experience that when I give preference to just one, that's dangerous. I need to learn how to work with all three of them harmoniously.
Mhm.
And it does take time and it is a journey and it's not a linear one, but it is one that when we start to recognize the ways in which we have disconnected from certain parts of ourselves or we've preferenced different parts of ourselves, how can we start to gently but intentionally start working again with compassion and kindness to all three parts so that we can start to work more harmoniously?
So, can you kind of walk us through on how somebody could do that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that are like, yes, I need to know how.
Yeah. Absolutely. So there's many there's many different ways and it obviously is tailored to where someone is at in their journey. So when I work with someone, it's really okay, like what is most present for us now? What's happening in your world that is showing up? And that could be something from the past that is still, trickling through in the present moment. It could be how someone is experiencing anxiety, how someone is experiencing disconnection from themselves or within their relationships. And the the place that I begin usually most commonly is how do we feel safe enough to start this process? So when we have experienced betrayal, let's call it that, and whether that's betrayal to ourselves or betrayal from another, and we have carried that within our body, within our system, we've fractured our mind, we've closed off our heart, whatever that looks like for the individual, it's providing a space and a way for us to feel safe enough to start to go to those places because we want to not only feel safe in the therapeutic relationship, but safe enough to know that outside of that safe space between client and therapist, that we're also able to function in life with all of the different roles that we have. So feeling safe in how we connect to the body again, feeling safe with how we connect to the breath and the present moment and feel resourced enough to be able to feel the plethora of feelings that may come up when we start to explore what's there, but also knowing that we have safety in how we recognize what's happening to us. So there's that self-awareness piece, but there's also that awareness around how do we be kind and compassionate to ourselves on this journey? Because it's a long road, yeah? And it's
Yeah.
being aware of the ways that we talk to ourselves in that process. Because, I've worked with many women and I've been guilty of it too, where we feel like we're broken and we need to be fixed. And the way that we talk to ourselves is not nice. And it has the capacity and the possibility to then make things worse for ourselves when we're trying to intentionally heal in a kind way. So with safety as a foundation, we're then able to start to explore with curiosity leading the way here, and a lens of not judging what comes up and not judging ourselves for our experiences, and see what's there to be explored. So a a way that we can start to do that is getting curious about, what is the relationship with our heart? What is the relationship with the body? What's our relationship to the mind? And seeing where has the most charge for that person to then dive into. So for example, if someone has disconnected so much from their body, their safest place might be in their mind, because when that's a coping strategy. We might
Mhm.
overanalyze and want to be in control of everything. So if we think that we need to be in our mind because that's a safe place. So it's about finding different avenues to feel safe again in the body, to be able to bring that into an equilibrium. It might be that we've closed off our heart and we've got a real challenge with trusting again and opening up our heart. And I never ever advocate for us to go straight from one thing all the way to the other end of the spectrum and open up too quickly. We've had experiences that mean that we have experienced trauma and trust has been broken, and we need to strengthen our discernment muscle over who we speak to, who we can trust. And again, that's a gradual journey of slowly but gently finding evidence of where we can feel safe and who we can feel safe with to start that process.
Yeah. That's where I struggle. I get to the point where I can feel safe, and then something will happen, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm not safe." And then, "Oh,
Mm.
no, I am safe." It's just like a back and forth game, and it's so awful. Ugh. And then I don't know, I feel like push people away, not realizing it, or I just be by myself, because it's like it's safe being by myself, because I was always by myself my whole life. Like, I was the one
Yeah.
keeping myself safe.
Yes.
So,
And this experience of almost like this hyper independence is because we've learned it's a learned behavior that, okay, I can't trust anyone. I've been the one to keep myself safe this whole time, so I can't rely on anyone else to be able to do that. And we're not judging anything as good or bad. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
mhm.
There's strength in that. You are resilient. You know yourself. And there's beautiful qualities in that. We just also want to be aware of not closing ourselves off to connections that are safe and are healthy. But I
Yeah.
understand that it's so complex and it's so multi-layered in all of the ways that we are and need to heal from what we've experienced in life.
Mhm. I get to the point where it takes me a while to even trust anybody, like a long while. And then when I do start trusting somebody, I'll start opening up and talking or whatever. And then one little thing will happen and I'm like, "Oh," and I'll shut down. I just won't talk no more. And I wish I could get past that. And I don't even know why I really do it. And it's gotten to the point where it's frustrating to me, and it's because I don't know if it's like a warning sign, like that's why I do it. And so maybe, sometime in my life, like it's the same emotion that I've had before, and I just don't know how to pinpoint where it came from. So that's
Mm.
my automatic response.
Oh, well, you can work with that. You can play with that.
Mhm.
So, I one of the things that I support my clients to learn is this awareness that you're already talking about of, okay, what is happening at any one time? And we call it tracking. So being able to track your response or reaction in a situation. So if
Mhm.
you're in a conversation with someone, and as to use your example, you're openly sharing, and then something happens which triggers a particular response in you, and then you said that you then go to shut down.
Oh, I do.
So
I totally shut down.
yeah, right? And that's really fascinating, and that's interesting because you have an awareness of what's happening, and you've got this feedback that's happening, yeah? So you've got,
Mhm.
I imagine that there is feedback from your body in recognizing, "Oh, I'm shutting down now."
Mhm.
There's particular sensations that are signaling that to you. And what I encourage my clients with is this creative reflective practice. So in your own time and in your own way outside of that situation, you can start to reflect on, okay, what happened there? What was it that we were talking about? Or what was it about that person's, maybe it's their words, maybe it was their tone of voice, maybe it was their body posture. Like what was it that triggered that response? And yes, it could definitely reflect back a past memory of when someone did something similar. It could be activating a particular coping mechanism within yourself to keep yourself safe, because in the past maybe they did this and then there was a particular reaction, and then that, that there was a bad thing that happened. Um so it's being able now to recognize the body's signals and then discern, okay, was this a response that was keeping me safe in the moment, or was I then taken back to a past situation and then reacted in a similar way because I didn't want the past event to then reoccur? Does that make sense?
Mhm. No, it makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
what
I
I
think
love
about that all the time too, and I try to break it down, and then I just get stuck in my head, and then I go in a whirlwind, so I stop. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know, it's just because 'cause I'm not ready to dig that deep. I've done a lot of healing really quickly. I think it's like this last almost year. So, but I've realized that I feel like I'm in a whole other journey in my healing, and it's very overwhelming to me. I don't like it because I don't like to not have control of
Yeah.
my feelings or know. That's the only thing I can think of is like control of my feelings. And
Yeah.
I don't even know what's going on with anything inside of me, with anything. And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with this? How am I supposed to, one, protect myself? And then I'm very cautious with people, and I'm not being like that anymore. And then, that makes me freak out because I'm like, "Well, what if this person I can't trust and I'm just letting them in without, the I wanna say probation period, but that's not the right word."
I understand.
But yeah, so I'm just like, I feel like I'm setting myself up just to get hurt or
Mm.
just ran over or whatever, and that's what I've protected myself from doing my entire life, even though all I did was get hurt my entire life.
Yeah.
So
There's
that's
so
kinda
much there, right? Like,
there is.
yeah. And I just wanna reflect back some of the things you said, because there's some gems in there. There is, you spoke about, like, you're at a particular stage in your healing journey, and there are so many different stages and seasons that we can go through in this non-linear process of healing.
Mhm,
And I love the symbol of the spiral. Really, I found that's really supportive. So, we know that the healing journey isn't linear, but
mhm.
we can often feel like we're coming back to the same loop. And what I say to myself and what I say to the women I get to work with is, it might feel like you're going back to the same situation, and you're reacting the same. But what I would say here is that, you have a more perspective, you've got more awareness, and you're getting more tools and resources to respond differently. And we can be really harsh on ourselves, yeah? Like, "Oh, why am I still doing this?" Or, "Oh," that's what I mean about
Mhm.
the self-talk. But, it's for me, I feel like it's about managing. It's about awareness and managing. And when we have this awareness, we're able to respond differently, and it can then change over time. Um, but also we can be so hungry to heal and hungry to, just fix the problem already, problem
Yeah.
and find solutions already and be different. And that's where I advocate for us to be more kind and compassionate to ourselves because, kudos to you that you have so actively gone after this pathway of healing. You're still getting up in the morning and you are not only like surviving through the aftermath, but you are actively educating yourself and, creating a podcast and talking to different people to resource yourself. Like,
Yeah.
let's focus on that. Like, that's brilliant.
Thanks. That's what everybody says, and I'm just like, "Okay." I'm really bad at taking compliments, but thank you. I'm working on it.
Hopefully, the more compliments they'll start to land in your system.
Yeah, it's so funny. Everybody on my podcast who compliments me, they're like, "Yeah, you don't take compliments very well, do you?" I was like, "No, I'm working on it though. Thank you so much."
Yeah.
But,
And I imagine that that might be it's I can relate to that, and I think that for me, when I have been challenged with receiving compliments in the past,
mm,
it's because of that hyper independence of like, I don't wanna receive anything, I rely on myself only, and yeah, being able to gently lean into receiving that and being able to see yourself in a different light. Because from what I know, um, of what you've shared and what I've listened to in your podcast, like, what you're doing is quite incredible, and we can get caught also in this space. I know I did, of just wanting to heal really quickly and, and, get to an arrival point where I didn't get triggered and these coping mechanisms didn't come up. But I
mhm,
learned over time that that's not how it works.
yeah,
Um, and that's why we have resources and tools. And that's why, my journaling practice is I have to stay disciplined with that. My outlets of feeling the different feelings and moving my body and expressing it out on paper is really important. And I have to prioritize that. And also we need to make time for joy and play and not just be in this constant hamster wheel of trying to heal ourselves.
mhm. Yeah, I'm so used to just keeping busy my entire life, like, always finding the next thing to work at because it preoccupied me of everything that's going on around me, and it was
Yeah.
one thing I think that I could kind of control, and if I couldn't, then I would stop doing it. But, I mean, now I push myself, but it's more so for my kids, I
Mm,
want them to know, "Hey, you don't have to stay stuck in that one relationship or whatever that is just making you miserable, like, you don't have to stay there. You can build your life without someone." And I just think that that's really important, and all my kids are they're my biggest cheerleaders. Definitely very blessed by them.
that's so
But,
beautiful.
yeah, that's, like, biggest thing, I just want people to know that they don't have to stay.
Mhm.
It's gonna be hard, but you can get out. Um, I don't know. It's just that was my main thing, to letting people know that they're not alone because I felt like I was the only person in the world going through what I have gone through in
Mm.
relationships and life, growing up, whatever. And this podcast has definitely really helped me myself. I don't feel alone anymore. Like some people come on here, I was like, oh my gosh, really? Me too. Like I thought I was the only person. So, and then just to know that they don't have to stay. It's gonna be hard, but it's hard staying in a relationship that's awful too.
Mm. And I wanna commend you for the courage of leaving, but the courage of the platform that you have created because I know that feeling of isolation and feeling like
Mhm.
you can't speak out about it, or you can't um, connect, or that no one will understand, and all of the different things that our mind can play tricks on ourselves for, or that we've been told and taken on as truth. And the more that we are able to safely share and connect, we realize that we're not alone, and we realize how horrifically common it is. And there's strength in that. There's camaraderie in that, from survivor to survivor, to the communities and what is available through what we have experienced. How we can connect through that is very powerful.
Yeah. I just love that everybody's coming together. I
It
didn't
makes me
know yeah, I didn't know if people would actually come on my show and share their story when I first started this. I had no idea. I was like, "Oh, there's not gonna be anybody out there who's gonna wanna talk about anything." But that hasn't been the case, so it's pretty cool.
And what I think is really beautiful, when, when I see people sharing their story, when I was when I had just left my relationship, I didn't know half the terms that I now know. I didn't
Yeah.
understand the language. And the more that people talk about it, the more that they can relate and be like, "Oh, that's what he used to do," or, "Oh, I experienced that as well." And we're able to place our experiences,
Mhm.
to get language for it, and we're able to know that it's not right, and that it wasn't
Mhm.
healthy, and that it was toxic, and know the different things that were at play, that we were experiencing. So not only does it educate ourselves, but I feel like when I hear other people's stories, not only does that bolster me and make me feel strong in, to keep going and to keep showing up, but you're literally leaving a ripple of inspiration.
Mm.
So I understand how you would be surprised, but I also think it's, as an onlooker, I think it's quite beautiful, because we don't know who we're inspiring by sharing our story, but
Mhm.
I know for sure that we are inspiring people.
Yeah. Most definitely. Yep, I always tell people, like, I just record and post, and whoever God wants to see my show, he'll lead them to it, I guess.
And we have to trust that, right? We have to trust,
Yeah.
you know, I um I spent many years writing my first book, Body Wisdom, and it's called Body Wisdom: A Guide to Connecting with Your Intuitive Self. And the self-talk and imposter syndrome that went through me when I was in the lead up to publishing this was like, "Oh, who's gonna read it? Who cares?"
Yeah.
All of these things. And I imagine it was similar when you started your podcast. But what I kept on saying to myself is similar to what you just said, in that, like, this is my contribution, and I trust that the people who need to read it and need to hear this in whatever
Mhm.
season of life they find it, it's exactly perfect, and that's who I'm writing it for.
Yeah, I had the same thing when I wrote my book, and I thought people were gonna I thought I was gonna get bashed for writing it.
Mm,
And I didn't. People are actually reaching out to me and they telling me like, "Oh, it made me cry," and I'm like, "Oh goodness," like I wasn't expecting that. So I
how
didn't
beautiful.
really know what to say, and I was like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I made you cry." They're like, "No, I'm just so glad like I felt the same way," and blah blah. Blah. And I was like, "Oh, okay." Um,
Yes.
but everybody just reached out and said good things, and I don't know why, but I wasn't prepared for all the good that people were gonna say. I haven't had anybody say anything negative about it, but that just goes to all the negative to scare you from doing something. Same with my podcast. And, it was just like, why are you doing this? Nobody's
Mm,
going to listen to it, that sort of thing.
yeah.
So, but
I heard once, and I'm probably gonna butcher the quote, but I heard once there was a quote that was along the lines of, when as we heal, what that allows is for our capacity to expand in receiving the joy that is available.
mhm.
So, coming back to receiving the compliments, receiving the connection through that feedback from readers and listeners. And it's like, as we heal, our capacity to receive all of that and to feel the joy in that rather than just the self-criticism or whatever else negative is happening. It's like, oh, we're allowed to feel good. We're allowed to, not feel stressed or anxious all the time. There is joy that's available here. And I love that you have your children who are not only a big reason for you, but a motivation and cheerleaders as well.
Mhm. Yeah, they're great. I try to tell them that all the time, like, how amazing they are. So you wanna tell us a little bit about, like, you growing up as a child. What was your, like, outlook on love? Did you, like, you grow up feeling loved, or did you struggle in that area? Or is that something that just, did you have, like, good childhood and then you didn't have issues until, like, you got in your abusive relationship?
Mm. Yeah, the link between childhood and what unfolds later in life. Yeah, it's fascinating because my parents divorced when I was 7, and I think it's always so fascinating, like the links and the parallels with
Mhm.
what happens in childhood and then what we are then attracted to later on in life, or we then see as love. And I think I had a pretty skewed idea of what love is. We've been speaking about hyper independence. I was incredibly hyper independent from the age of 7, and I didn't quite understand what was happening at the time through the family court and through, hearing different things from my mum, hearing different things from my dad and his partner, and feeling very caught in the middle.
Mhm.
Um, and, it's so interesting to have learnt now over recent years what psychological abuse is and how that changes one's memories, one's understanding of reality, how we are gaslit, how we gaslight ourselves, how attachment works, and how we, are protective over certain parents and don't really understand what's going on. And I think I really rejected the idea of marriage from a young age. I felt like marriage just equaled betrayal and fighting and arguments and nastiness. And
Mhm.
I rejected all the Hollywood movies that promoted, falling in love really quickly and someone being there for you. And I didn't understand why people wanted relationships. I didn't understand why people spoke so highly of their partners. I was like, "Oh, well, they're probably just gonna betray you." Like, I had
Yeah.
such a view that was that was founded in
Mhm.
the evidence of what I had experienced as a child. So, I believe that that really did set me up to be quite skeptical um, of relationships, but then also equal parts quite naive and with a peppering of hopeful for this idea of, oh, maybe I am too negative. I had different partners, and the one that I refer to in particular make me question that and be like, "Oh, but why couldn't we be the one? Why couldn't you be my soulmate, my twin flame?" Like, the use of language and concepts to manipulate, um, and coerce me into thinking that my way of thinking was too negative and that I needed to be open and needed to maybe this was the person that I could trust. Maybe I, um, you know, was in fact deserving of love in terms of what he called love or expressed as love. So I'm not sure if this is making any sense, but I think that there definitely is multiple different perspectives that I had from childhood that then created particular ways of viewing the world and allowed me to also be quite easily manipulated into thinking something was what it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. As you were talking, it made me think that my whole life there's been patterns and they just kept repeating themselves. And
Mm,
I think that's part of my problem now with people is if they do something that, like, hurts me or, like, makes me upset or, triggers me in some way, I, like, automatically think, "Okay, well, this is the scenario that's going on at this time. Okay, well, if there's that scenario again, the same thing's gonna happen." And I'm
yeah.
pretty sure that's just because that's how my whole life has been.
Mm,
And I didn't even think about that until you were just talking about that, and I was like, "Well," I mean, I've kind of already thought about it, but it didn't really click that that's what was probably happening. Or maybe I just didn't wanna admit it. It's probably I just didn't wanna admit it.
yeah.
One of those things, like, "Oh, no, that's stupid. That's not what it is." Ugh,
Mm,
I need to work on that, like, stop brushing things off, really dig deeper, um, and I don't know, I don't like to feel uncomfortable when I'm digging deeper. So when I start feeling uncomfortable, I'm like, "Okay, that's enough of that," and find something else to do.
yeah. I understand that, and that's also very common, and I think, for me, I resisted anything that made me feel uncomfortable. So I too
Mhm,
lived solely in my head, kept myself really busy so that I couldn't ever stop to feel anything that was uncomfortable, anything that was rising to the surface. And when I spoke earlier about feeling safe enough to be able to do that, like that's the starting point to be able to resource our body in being able to feel those feelings. I talk a lot about safe containers with my clients so that we are able to give ourselves pockets of time and moments where we're not ignoring our feelings, we're not suppressing them so harshly, which is a lot of
mhm.
my life story, but
Yeah,
that we're actually able to build our capacity to feel what is coming up, but also know that we are able to give loving kindness and compassion to that part of ourselves and still be able to function in the real world. Because as we've already said, we are, women are caregivers, whether that is to our parents, our children, our partners. Like we're constantly caring for other people. We have to show up for our work. We have to show up for our commitments. We have to show up for ourselves. And it's interesting that just like society, that was the last thing that I said, because the way that we prioritize our self-care is completely flipped.
mhm.
It should be like that saying that, you put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on anyone else. But we aren't. There is shame and guilt in doing that within our society. So one of the things that I was afraid of, and one of the fears that the women that I work with and when I first start to work with them often say, is that there is that fear of collapse. If I feel everything, I'm just going to be catatonic. I'm just going to collapse.
Mhm.
And I can't stop because I need to do A, B, and C and D and da 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 da. Da.
Yeah.
Um, and I get that. I so get that. So what I advocate for and what I support women to do is, how do we create ways that we can feel what is coming up, process it, give expression to it, allow ourselves to feel it in the moment, but then also allow ourselves to bring ourselves back so that we are able to safely continue. And, I guess another term for this is compartmentalizing. And that has often been, um, that's been given a lot of shade, that, that's bad. But I actually feel like when done well, that allows us to really healthily still show up in the world, but also balance feeling our feelings. And I do understand that we can have a lot of fear around what does that look like and how do I hold myself? But that's when we start with the body and we start with connecting deeper with the breath and connecting deeper with that body awareness and touch, safe touch, then we're able to hold ourselves through that. And that's often where, me as a somatic and expressive art therapist holds that space for someone to explore that, but then also resource themselves. So they've got those mantras to refer to, they've got those somatic kinesthetic ways to support their body in feeling big emotions and in holding big emotional states.
That's good. I've heard a lot of people come on my show talk about giving yourself hugs and like just touching your arms like this or going like this just so you feel something when you get like that. It's
Yeah,
a-
and it
it-
brings the body into the moment. It presences the body here. It's very common that when we're feeling big emotions or uncomfortable emotions, or maybe we're going into a panic, that we bring in the five senses. What can you feel? What can you see? What can you smell? What can you hear? We're bringing in different parts that are intentionally bringing us back into the present moment. And that
Mhm.
somatic does that same thing. Um, and what's really beautiful around that is that when we're feeling big emotions, if it's too much now, if we want to, slowly start to bring that to a close, gently support ourselves to bring that to a close. Okay, like let's notice our weight on the chair. Bring in the shape of your body. Feel your feet on the earth. Connect with the warmth of that self-touch. And with the self-touch, when I'm working with people, again, it's about bringing back that trust and bringing back that agency. I don't touch, I don't put hands on them, but it's them. I'm encouraging them and inviting them to explore that self-touch. Where does your body want to be held right now? Is it a hand on the heart, hand on the belly? Is it a hug? Does it want some massage around the shoulders? Like, what are the body signals that are really yearning for that? And how do we explore that feedback? For someone, a brushing motion might be really uncomfortable and heightening, but for someone else, it might feel like really cathartic and like a release. So in our sessions and in my work with people, it's about developing that awareness of what works for you in that moment. And when people find something that's really comforting, that then becomes a resource. So that could be, okay, they've just had a big emotional release. Now they need to go back to work. Maybe they return to that brushing and they brush themselves off as if they're dusting, sweep, a complete sweep of their body. And then that is like a somatic refresher to then be able to shift gears and go back into work mode. But we haven't bypassed or suppressed the emotion, because what we continue to bottle up, we store in the body and it comes out in some way. And what
Mhm.
we continue to dismiss or bypass or run from then becomes our shadow. So I definitely advocate for us to learn safe ways to reconnect. And it doesn't all have to be done at once, but in little snippets that are much more practical and much more tangible for us to still be able to move through the world.
That's really good. When I was, I would say probably when I was younger, probably like maybe 5, 10 years ago, um, I couldn't feel anything. Like if I touched myself, I literally could not feel like myself. If I went to go like this, I couldn't feel it. The only thing that
Mm,
could help me with all the emotion and everything inside of me is if somebody would lay on top of me and put that heavy, heavy pressure on me. And that was
mm,
the only way that I could get any type of release. So, I mean, like, how often are you gonna be able to have somebody just, like, put all their weight on you, you know? So, it was like I felt like I just never had any release on anything that was ever going on inside me. But
yes. Yeah, and that's such a good example of the ways that we have disconnected or dissociated from the body. And
mm,
that what comes to mind as you were speaking was the beautiful weighted blankets that we can get that
yeah.
to receive that same level of pressure and holding, and again, it's about working out what works for us individually, because for someone that could be so comforting and reassuring, and for someone else it could feel trapping. So I really encourage you and your listeners to play and explore the different feedback that we're getting from the body to learn how we can resource ourselves better.
It's really good. Thanks for sharing that.
You're so welcome.
Is there anything else you want to tell the audience or say anything to them?
I guess in summary of what we've shared and what we've explored, I hope that in listening to our conversation that they don't feel so alone, and that if anything that we shared or that I spoke about today gets them curious or resonates with them, then I really encourage them to seek different modalities that advocates for creative self-discovery and creative reflection.
Mhm.
Um, my website, there is a bunch of different free resources to start that process of the different entry points of feeling safe in the body again. And, I've got different journaling prompts to start that dialogue with the intuition and dialogue with different parts of self. My book is also available on paperback and audio, which has over 20 different invitations of where people can start if they just don't know. So yeah, they're welcome to access all of that and to book in. I often, I speak a lot at women's festivals and at different workshops. And in these workshops, I guide people through these processes. And when I was a student of this work, I recognized that, oh, like, I've just done this process, or I've just done this drawing piece. What do I do with it now?
Mhm.
And I always wanted that opportunity to debrief with the facilitator and integrate it better. So what I do offer is hour-long free sessions where if someone is curious or they've listened to what we've had to say and they want to know more, we can jump on a call. They can book in a time. I am in Melbourne, Australia, so there is a time difference. But if they want to explore that, then I'm happy for them to reach out and I can see what I can do to support them in giving suggestions for different resources and practices for wherever they are in their season of life and their journey.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. Really, really enjoyed our conversation today. I learned a lot, so I just want to say thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for providing this platform, and keep doing what you're doing.
If today's episode spoke to your heart, be sure to follow me and follow Silent No Longer so you never miss a new episode filled with healing and hope. Please share this episode with someone who may need to hear it. You never know the impact it could have. If you're ready to take the next steps in your own healing, you can take my free quiz to see if you may be in a toxic relationship. Schedule a free clarity call with me or read my story in Behind Closed Doors. Thank you for listening to Silent No Longer. Your story isn't over and healing is possible.